best part about pads is often the worst part about pads at the same time, and that's that they are very washy and they blend into the background. So how do we get the right mix between having something that just fades in and is nice to something a little bit more aggressive? That trick is achieved by attaching an envelope to the pitch cutoff within the voicing page. So essentially what we're going to do is we're going to bring this over here and then bring it back down with an envelope. So let's listen to what my patch sounds like with a little bit more than the actual effect was in the song. Very dissonant and very, like I said, pretty aggressive kind of pad, crying out for attention. And then back down to nothing. Let's turn this off. Very smooth entrance. So let's turn it back. Let's hear without the pitch cutoff one more time. Super smooth beginning, super smooth attack phase. Now we turn it on, and the attack phase is just going to get a little bit more intense, coming over to one semitone up. I mean, probably even like halfway, because this envelope doesn't even go all the way to the top. So let's listen to it again. So it just brings out your pads a little bit more. I have another patch over here that demonstrates just that. So same trick. We have no pitch cutoff and we have two voices. Let's just listen to it straight up. A little piercing, just a little much, but does sound like a pad. Turn this guy on, and now let's listen to what it sounds like. Simple trick to make your pads just pop out a little bit more. Another little thing that I had in my patch is I turned on the S loop so that it would continue to just play with this pitch cutoff dissonance just a tiny bit. And the reason is this whole pitch cutoff area in the voicing page is pretty intense. All you need often is just, we'll turn off the envelope and we'll just do it by hand. You don't have to jump all the way to the top to get the effect. You can just wiggle it around at the bottom. So, once again, our trick is just to bring a little bit of energy into our pad. Tip number 2 is a nice trick, but it also takes a little bit more of an ear for better execution than just, oh, I think this sounds right. So the trick is that in order to get 3 oscillators really working together in this pad kind of realm, you want to have each one occupying a different texture and a different space. So let's listen to what each oscillator is doing with our pick smoke thing. This is kind of in the upper mid-range, but if we bring it down an octave, it's kind of all over the place, but it does just capture that mid-grit area. Now let's go to oscillator 2. Upper range, piercing. What's that texture? It's kind of like it has that bell sound. And then down here at the bottom, we have our bass. So in a sentence, you're trying to occupy low, mids, highs. But it gets a little bit more complicated than that, because if we just do the standard trick, which is, add an octave, go an octave below, and, use a sine wave, it's fine, but it's just nothing special. I don't know. Let's go like this. Sweet accordion, dude. So let's try to get a little bit more creative than that. So this is where the intermediate stage comes into play. So first starting with our kind of belly high range sound. We're even just gonna put that into its own filter. So let's move everything to filter 2 except for this guy. Okay. Now, because it's the highest range, it's the most important to, I would say, along with our mid-range, the high range has to fight that balance between piercing and kind of smooth. So we already have our envelope on to help that process a little bit. Let's maybe use maybe a low pass to just take the edge off a little bit after it does its job of shining a little bit. So we're going to go turn our envelope to max with a bit of an attack. This is where we're going to hear that shininess. And then it disappears. Doesn't linger too long. Reverb does that job for us. Okay, there's oscillator number 1, our highs. Now let's go to the bass. That's pretty simple. I don't want to just do a sine wave. I want to find something that has a little bit more, just a bit more grit. So let's see what we can find. I am not by any means a wavetable expert. So when I'm looking through, I'm just, it doesn't matter. Honestly, like getting exactly the right wavetable. You just find something that fills the range you're looking for. Ba la 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 la. Okay, so here we go. Ooh. I like this. I don't like this range right here, but this is kind of sweet. Let's see if we can. All right, let's try this. I'm going to go the other direction. Instead of turning this thing off, we're going to have it get a little bit more aggressive as time goes on. And we don't want it to just linger in this kind of range, because a pad, like I said, should wash in the background, and this isn't. That's not very subtle for our bass. We want the mid-range to do what that's doing right now. So we're going to have that same attack. There we go. Bring it up, and then come right back down. So together. Oh, there we go. Turn oscillator 1 on. Maybe let's throw it down another octave. Ooh, cool. We'll do the same thing with the amp. And with the amp on the bass, we're going to just have it come in all the way and stay pretty high up. Notice that we're just keeping this, instead of having these be equals and having them be the same volume, we're just going to bring it up as it's needed. We don't need it right. We don't need to emphasize it at the beginning. We need it to support oscillator 1. So again, not just throwing these on and putting them a couple octaves up and just calling it a day. We're taming them to point our listener's ear in the right direction. Now, I know this is dragging on. Let's get on with it. So the last section, we're going to go with our mid-range. And the cool part about attaching a mid-range with a low subby kind of oscillator is that you can put both of these into the same filter and not have to worry too much about your low end getting affected. It's really just going to, if you put a low pass filter, it's just going to tackle this from staying away from the high end, which again is already covered. So let's just explore around, turn this oscillator off, find something kind of nice. And the chord section is kind of cool. Let's check digital hybrid and just kind of work our way up. This would have been perfect for that kind of bell upper end, but whatever. Okay. That one's in first place right now. No. Again, not encroaching on anyone else's territory. There we go. And let's just check bend plus and minus. Cool. So bend minus it is. Side note, bend minus and minus slash plus, if you have this right in the middle, it's going to have no effect. It'll be the same as if you had spectrum all the way up. Spectrum is going to take away the harmonics of whatever is going on with your wavetable, essentially being a mini low-pass filter. And bend minus or plus is going to give you a couple extra textures. Formant is pretty crazy, so let's just hang with bend for now. Whenever you get a wavetable, always check what bend is going to have an effect on it, because it's usually going to give you some other textures. It's good to know if there's better ones. So I went with bend minus because we do get just a little bit more grit out of it. So bend minus it is. Okay. So again, trying to accomplish a pad that's not too, doesn't grab too much attention, but also doesn't suck, isn't basic as hell. So let's try this. Series, sure. So now what we're going to do is we're going to just listen to what they all sound like together. And this is to not just shoot in the dark with this mid-range. This is like the real meat that we need to understand how it sounds as we're going. So we don't just want to guess with this. Like these two, it's pretty straightforward. Get something tinny, get something deep. This is like the main body of the sound. So put it all together and let's hear what it sounds like. We get a nice amount of grit right here. And with this one, I think I want to hear the first oscillator the most, and then bring these other ones in to follow it up. Oh, that's a nice spot right there. Cool. Got it. See if there's any other textures that are going to help out. Cool. So now let's go to our envelope 4, which we'll have some more to say about this in a bit. Nice. Cool. So, you know what? I'll even include this in here just because, why not? Great. It's called Pad. So thanks for sticking with me on that. This is kind of a longer process than normal. Let's see. 11 minutes. That's not bad. But I do like to show you the process of how I go about figuring out these problems and solving them. There's pads. So that's topic 2. Envelope 4 controls the volume. Now there's 3 main uses of that. There's either bringing the attack up to accomplish a fade in. There's a pluck achieved by bringing the sustain down. And there's just max volume, which is let the patch do its thing. Now let's create a little bit more drama by messing around with envelope 4 to make it work for us in more creative ways. The easiest one to understand is that the attack level doesn't always have to be right up top 100%. What this is going to do is it's going to allow us to create a little bit of extra drama by having a longer attack phase, and then cool stuff is going to happen. Let's hear what that sounds like. So, long build, and then kind of gets to the meat of the problem, or the patch rather. So, what happens here though? We go from, I don't know, maybe 20%, and then we jump up to about halfway. So that's controlled by whether you're using linear or exponential for your decay phase. The difference is, let's bring the level up so you can really hear what the difference is. So when you have your attack phase going to, however long your attack phase is at this level, if you boost right up top with an exponential curve, you're going to, again, create more drama just right at that moment. Let's listen. It gets really loud at just a quick snap. Now, if we take that instead with a linear, exponential curve, linear curve, you can kind of hear that extra high harmonic that's going on within the patch, and we don't get to capitalize on that when it's set to linear. There we go. So it's just a jump here without having to change your decay level. Next, moving on. So the level, that's a sustain, but the S loop is what's interesting here. Essentially, you have not only one LFO, but 3 LFOs that you could play with. The reason I say 3 is because, number one, let's listen to what this is even doing. Okay, it hits this LFO. I'm going to turn the decay and attack down just so we can hear this. Okay, so first notice that the audio is just pumping in and out, and then it goes faster. That's because I have an LFO on the S loop, which is essentially, let's turn this off. This is essentially giving us another LFO. It gives us a little bit more control over how much variance there's going to be within our volume. Kind of nice when it's a slower rate. Now over here, when we change the level, we put an LFO on the level, it's essentially like putting in LFO on the amp of an LFO. That sounds confusing. Let me explain. If you have an LFO doing its job, let's point to, what's another one? Let's do something like this. I hope this doesn't mess up the patch too much. All right, cool. So you can hear what this is. You can hear what LFO5 is doing. Now, if I turn down the amp on the LFO, it won't do anything. It's essentially fading in and fading out an LFO. And so that's what putting an LFO on the S loop does. It's going to essentially give you an LFO that goes all the way and it's doing a lot to doing absolutely nothing. So this is a big jump from just throwing it up all the way, or doing a standard pad by throwing the attack phase up. You can again mess with the level. You can change the curve of the decay phase. Thank you. And you can turn up the S loop to give you another LFO. And not like you might as well use an LFO, but there's 2 reasons you'll use this instead. Number one, you have no control over the rate. It's going to be determined by time, not by your project's BPM, which is kind of nice. When you make a patch, it's going to be like that forever, no matter what, rather than changing along with the speed, along with the tempo of the project. So S loop has no control over synced rate. Now, reason number 2 is you can be very, very subtle by just doing something like this. You go from almost max to max back and forth. It doesn't have to be very dramatic like that. And number 3, because you can even set your S loop to go 1 time, and that is going to allow you to not only have your attack and decay phase, but you have this like extra little boost or extra little cut to at least just make your synth have to go through a few more steps to finish up. So notice here, this pattern looks a little bit less controlled and a little bit less detailed than this pattern, even though they're essentially the same thing. So attack, decay, sustain, loop now are the parameters that I'd like you to. And thus concludes Farmhouse Sounds episode 15. So you'll notice there was a pretty big gap in there, and The reason for my absence was I've been really on the grind, getting my sample packs in order, getting my sounds in order, doing some more design, and holy shit, I have a lot of new tricks and a lot of new ideas for you guys. So I'm going to try to pump out a lot more of these videos, and it's going to be a great time for everybody. So with that said, I will see you, if not next week, much sooner.